The village of Umia was nestled between rolling green hills and dense forests, a serene place where the rhythms of life were dictated by the rising and setting of the sun. The villagers lived simple lives, tilling the fertile soil, fishing in the nearby river, and weaving colorful cloths. They were a close-knit community, bonded by traditions passed down through generations. Among the villagers, tales of wealth and success in the outside world were rare and often exaggerated. So when Sadiq, a former villager, returned to Umia in grand style, his arrival was nothing short of legendary. His convoy of shiny black cars stirred up clouds of red dust as they rolled into the village. The vehicles gleamed under the sunlight, and the vehicles gleamed under the sunlight, and the villagers gathered in awe, marveling at the spectacle. Sadiq was not just wealthy, he was extravagantly so. Dressed in the finest fabrics and adorned with gold jewelry, he exuded power and success. His generosity was even more astonishing. Each time he returned, he brought gifts, sacks of rice, bundles of cash, and toys for the children. He lavished the elders with kegs of palm wine and distributed clothing to the women. The villagers worshipped him as though he were a god, believing he had been blessed for his benevolence. What the villagers didn't know was that Sadiq's wealth came at a terrible cost. He was a member of a secretive cult group, a brotherhood that promised riches beyond imagination in exchange for blood sacrifices. Every act of charity he performed was a ritual, a calculated offering to the dark spirits he served. Unseen by the villagers, the gifts he distributed carried a curse. Children who accepted toys or other items from him would fall mysteriously ill and die within days. Yet the villagers, blinded by their gratitude and awe, failed to make the connection. They attributed the deaths to bad luck or ancestral wrath, never suspecting that their beloved benefactor was the source of their sorrow. Among the villagers was a boy named Amir, a curious and observant child with a mind far beyond his years. Amir had begun to notice the pattern of deaths that followed Sadek's visits. Though he was just a boy, he harbored suspicions that few would dare voice. The Yam Festival was a time of joy and abundance in Umia, a celebration that marked the culmination of the villagers' hard work and the blessings of their ancestors. This year's festival, however, was unlike any before it. Sadiq, the wealthiest man ever to emerge from the village, returned during the festivities, and his arrival was nothing short of a spectacle. His convoy of luxurious cars snaked its way into the village, each vehicle glinting under the scorching sun like a treasure from the gods. The villagers gathered in the square, their songs of praise and welcome rising to meet him. Sadiq stepped out of his car, exuding an air of wealth and power. Dressed in richly embroidered robes and adorned with gold jewelry, he looked like a king among men. The festival began with traditional dances, drumming, and offerings to the ancestors. Sadiq sat at the center of it all, surrounded by elders and dignitaries, his face a mask of benevolence. As the day unfolded, he began his well-known ritual of distributing gifts. He handed out sacks of rice, bundles of money, clothing, and toys to the villagers, each gift received with gratitude and adoration. But beneath the surface of this apparent generosity lay a sinister truth. Every item Sadiq distributed was laced with a curse, a dark spell bound to claim the lives of those who accepted them. For the occult brotherhood to which Sadiq belonged, these gifts were offerings to the spirits, a means of maintaining his wealth and power. Unseen by the joyous crowd, a shadow seemed to follow Sadiq, a dark energy that lingered over him. Those who were spiritually attuned could sense it, though they dared not speak of it. Among the crowd was Zainab, the village's spiritual guide, who watched Sadiq with wary eyes. She had long suspected that his wealth was not of natural origin, and the deaths of children following his visits only deepened her doubts. As the festival drew to a close, the villagers dispersed with their gifts, their hearts full of joy. Sadiq left the village with the same grandeur as his arrival. But the celebrations were soon overshadowed by tragedy. Within days, several children fell mysteriously ill. Among them was Tayo, a bright and lively boy who had received a carved wooden horse from Sadiq. His parents tried every remedy they knew, but his condition worsened rapidly. By the third day, Tayo was gone, leaving his family devastated. The villagers mourned the loss, attributing it to bad luck or ancestral displeasure. But Zainab knew better. She began to quietly investigate, piecing together the pattern of deaths that followed Sadiq's visits. Her suspicions grew stronger as she resolved to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The days after the Yam festival were filled with a peculiar unease in Umia. The villagers, unaware of the hidden darkness behind Sadiq's generosity, carried on with their lives, cherishing the gifts they had received. Children played with the toys. Women cooked meals using the provisions, and families proudly displayed the clothing and ornaments given by the wealthy man. But the joy was short-lived. The first sign of trouble came when a young boy, Malik, who had received a beautifully carved drum, fell mysteriously ill. He was a picture of health during the festival, but within 3 days he became lethargic, his vibrant laughter replaced by a pained silence. His family tried everything: herbs, prayers, and offerings, but nothing worked. By the 5th day, Malik was gone. His death sent ripples of sorrow through the village, but it was not the last. Other children who had received gifts from Sadiq began to exhibit similar symptoms. Each case followed the same pattern: sudden illness, a rapid decline, and death within days. The grief-stricken parents could not understand what was happening, and whispers of a curse began to circulate. Zainab, the village's spiritual guide, watched these events unfold with growing dread. For years, she had harbored suspicions about Sadiq, sensing a darkness around him that no amount of wealth could conceal. His visits always seemed to coincide with mysterious misfortunes, but no one dared to question him. Now, with the deaths piling up, her fears were coming to fruition. Determined to uncover the truth, Zainab began her investigations in earnest. She visited the families of the deceased children, examining the gifts they had received. Each item, though outwardly ordinary, carried an energy that was cold and malevolent. She performed cleansing rituals, but the dark energy lingered, defying her efforts. Late one night, as Zainab meditated in her shrine, she sought guidance from the ancestors. The spirits, restless and agitated, revealed a vision of Sadiq standing in a dark forest, surrounded by shadowy figures. In his hands he held a blood-soaked chalice, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. The vision confirmed what she had long suspected. Sadiq's wealth was rooted in blood rituals, and the gifts he distributed were tools of his dark pact. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Zainab approached the village elders. She recounted her findings and shared the vision, but the elders were hesitant to act. Sadiq's wealth had benefited the village in many ways, and they feared the repercussions of confronting him. However, Zainab's determination was unwavering. She knew that if they did nothing, more lives would be lost. Months passed, and the village tried to move on from the tragedies, though a lingering sense of unease remained. Zainab continued her quiet investigations, gathering evidence and preparing for the day Sadiq would return. She sought the counsel of a neighboring village's spiritual leaders, known for their powerful rituals and deep connection to the spirit world. Meanwhile, Sadiq remained oblivious to the growing suspicion around him. Secure in his power and influence, he continued his life of luxury, bolstered by the sacrifices demanded by the occult brotherhood to which he belonged. Each gift he distributed was an offering to the spirits, binding him further to their service and ensuring his wealth and status. But Sadiq's ambitions were growing. The occult group demanded ever greater sacrifices, and he knew that he needed to perform a grand ritual to cement his position. This time, the target would be a child, young, innocent, and pure. He set his sights on Leela, the daughter of a prominent family in Amahaya, whose bright spirit made her an ideal candidate. Unaware of Siddiq's sinister plans, the villagers prepared for his return. When the day arrived, his convoy once again rolled into the village, and the people gathered to welcome him. The elders, now aware of Zainab's suspicions, observed him closely, their faces betraying none of their thoughts. As the festival unfolded, Sadiq began his usual ritual of distributing gifts. But this time, Zainab was prepared. She had enlisted the help of the neighboring village's spiritual leaders, who hid among the crowd, ready to act when the moment came. When Sadiq presented a golden necklace to Laila, Zainab stepped forward, her presence commanding attention. She called upon the ancestors, invoking their power to reveal the truth. The air grew heavy, and the sky darkened as a chilling wind swept through the square. Suddenly, the golden necklace in Lila's hands began to glow, its light revealing a shadowy figure hovering behind Sadiq. The spirit, bound to him by his dark pact, was visible to all. The villagers gasped in horror as the spirit spoke, its voice echoing through the square. It recounted the sacrifices Sadiq had made, the lives he had taken, and the curses he had placed on his gifts. Sadiq, realizing he had been exposed, tried to flee, but the spiritual leaders from the neighboring village blocked his path. Together with Zainab, they began a powerful ritual to sever Sadiq's connection to the dark forces. The confrontation in the village square was like nothing Amahaya had ever witnessed. As the spiritual leaders chanted, the spirits of Sadiq's victims began to appear, their ghostly forms filled with anguish and rage. They surrounded Sadiq, their presence a testament to the suffering he had caused. The villagers watched in stunned silence, unable to look away. The once celebrated benefactor was now exposed as a monster, his every act of generosity revealed to be a tool of destruction. Sadiq's face twisted in fear as the spirits closed in, their energy tearing at his soul. The ritual to sever Sadiq's connection to the occult was a harrowing ordeal. The spiritual leaders called upon the elements, invoking the power of the ancestors to cleanse the village. The ground trembled beneath them, and the air crackled with energy as light and darkness clashed. Sadiq screamed as the spirits of the children he had sacrificed turned their wrath on him. They dragged him to the ground, their cries rising in a chilling crescendo. The earth opened beneath him, and a fiery abyss yawned at his feet. With one final anguished scream, Sadiq was pulled into the void, his body consumed by the forces he had once controlled. As the ritual concluded, the sky cleared, and a sense of peace settled over the village. The spirits of the children, freed from their torment, faded into the ether, their presence replaced by a profound stillness. The villagers, though shaken, felt a renewed sense of unity and resolve. Zainab, exhausted but victorious, led the village in a cleansing ceremony. The cursed gifts were burned, and rituals were performed to purify the land. The elders vowed to rebuild their community, ensuring that no one would ever again fall victim to such evil. The story of Sadiq's downfall became a cautionary tale, passed down through generations. It served as a reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition and the power of the ancestors to protect their people. Though scarred by their ordeal, the villagers emerged stronger and wiser, their faith in the spirits and each other renewed. And so, Umia entered a new chapter in its history, forever changed by the events that had unfolded, but determined to honor the lessons they had learned. This story teaches us an invaluable lesson. Unchecked ambition and the lure of wealth gained through dishonest or harmful means can bring devastation, not just to oneself, but to the entire community. It serves as a reminder to question apparent generosity when it feels too good to be true, and to value integrity and moral strength over material gain. The villagers of Umia learned the importance of vigilance, unity, and the protection of their traditions against external corrupting influences. Thank you for watching. If you found this story intriguing and thought-provoking, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more captivating tales and life lessons on this channel. See you in the next video. Long ago, in the ancient Azu kingdom, there flowed a vast river known as Obana River. The river wasn't just any ordinary water body, it was home to fascinating creatures that looked half human and half fish. The Z people, as the villagers called them, had lived there for generations. The villagers believed the Z people had mystical powers, and many whispered that their songs could calm storms or summon rain during droughts. Every morning, children would rush to the river bank, their small feet kicking up dust as they ran. Look, 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 the mermaids are coming. A child would shout, pointing at the water where blue scales sparkled beneath the surface. The adults would gather too, watching the peaceful scene as Z people swam near the surface, sometimes waving to the humans. The Z people often sang songs in a language no human could understand, their voices blending with the sound of the flowing water to create a mesmerizing melody. The fishermen would carefully navigate their boats around the areas where Z people swam, and there was an unspoken agreement about sharing the river's resources. But peace never lasts forever. One fateful morning, Toma, one of the most respected fishermen in Azu, went out early to cast his net. The sun had barely risen, and mist still clung to the water's surface. As he threw his nets, they landed in an area where young Z children were playing. "Human, you're too close to our children," the Z man shouted, his voice sharp with warning. Toma pulled at his net. "I've been fishing here for 20 years. These waters belong to everyone, not where our children swim." The Z man's face darkened with anger. All the Z people began surfacing, their faces worried. A young mermaid swam too close to one of Tama's nets and became tangled. "My son!" A Z screamed, diving toward the net. In the chaos, as Z people tried to free the child and Toma tried to protect his nets. Something went terribly wrong. The Z child was hurt, and the angry Z people killed Toma. Toma's body was found floating in the river. The news reached King Dara within the hour. The king sat on his throne, his face growing darker, as the village elder explained what had happened. Your Majesty, the elder finished, the people are afraid. If the Z people can kill our best fishermen, King Dara stood, his voice thundering through the throne room. Bring me my advisors and send word to every village along the river. That evening, the king made his proclamation from the palace steps. They have taken one of our own, he thundered, his voice echoing off the stone walls. From this day forward, no Z person shall be permitted to swim at the surface of Obana River. Any who dare defy this decree shall face immediate death. The peace between our peoples is forever broken. The decree changed everything. The Z folk retreated to the river's bottom, where they established their own kingdom under Malo, a strong and wise Z man who became their king. Malo's rule was marked by efforts to heal the wounded hearts of his people, and he began to train warriors to defend their realm, should humans ever attempt to invade the depths. Years passed, and in the underwater kingdom, life adapted to the darkness of the deep. Malo's daughter, Zara, grew into a curious young mermaid who often asked questions about the world above. One day, while helping her mother prepare their home for a celebration, Zara couldn't contain her curiosity. Mother, she said, what's it like at the surface? Aina paused, memories flickering across her face. Why do you ask, my dear? I hear the older ones talking sometimes about how things used to be. They mention something called sunlight. What is it? Aina looked at her daughter. Sunlight is, imagine the brightest, warmest thing you can think of. It's like that, but more beautiful than you can imagine. It makes everything glow with life, and the humans. Zara's eyes sparkled with interest. What were they like before? Are they different from us? They walk on two legs instead of swimming with tails. They used to be our friends. Long ago, the children would wave to us, and we'd wave back. Then why can't we talk to them anymore? Because fear and anger poisoned both sides, Ina explained. One terrible day changed everything. Well, we must stay here, where it's safe. But Zara couldn't stop wondering about the surface world. Late at night, when everyone else slept, she would swim as high as she dared, almost but not quite breaking the surface. The faint moonlight that filtered down fascinated her. One morning, King Malo noticed his daughter's distraction during their breakfast. What troubles you, my daughter? He asked. Father, why must we live in darkness? Surely not all humans are cruel. Malo's face grew serious. Zara, you don't understand the danger. The humans blame us for the death of one of their own. Their king has ordered our death if we are seen at the surface. But that was so long ago. Maybe things have changed. Some things don't change, my dear. Promise me you won't go to the surface. Zara remained silent, and her father sighed heavily. Meanwhile, in the palace above, Prince Akin was facing his own struggles. His father, King Dara, had summoned him to the throne room for what had become a regular argument. Son, the king said, I've received another message from King Tanu. Achan sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. Father, I understand, but no. King Dara slammed his fist on the table. Every suitable young woman in the kingdom has been presented to you. What more are you waiting for? I want to marry for love? Achan replied quietly. Is that so wrong? Love? The king scoffed. Love is a luxury we cannot afford. We need stability. And what about my future? Achan asked quietly. Your future is the kingdom, King Dara shouted. When will you understand that your personal desires don't matter? They should matter to my father, if not to my king, Achan replied, then immediately regretted his words. Get out, the king said, his voice dangerously quiet. Get out of my sight until you're ready to act like the prince you're supposed to be. Seeking solace, Achan found himself walking toward the Obana River. The moon cast a silver path across the water as he settled on a fallen log near the bank. The gentle lapping of waves against the shore always helped calm his troubled mind. That's when he saw her. A head emerged from the water, followed by shoulders and the most beautiful face he had ever seen a mermaid. Her scales had an unusual glittering blue tint. Their eyes met, and for a moment neither moved. Please, she whispered, don't call the gods. You shouldn't be here. It's dangerous. I know, Zara said, moving closer to the bank, but I had to see what it was like up here. Everything is so different. The air, the sounds, the way light moves. I'm Achan, he found himself saying. I'm Zara, she smiled, and Achan felt his heart skip a beat. This is my first time seeing the surface. Is that the moon? Yes, he said, pointing upward, and those are stars. They're beautiful. Zara breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. We can see a little bit of light through the water, but nothing like this. They talked for hours that night, sharing stories about their different worlds. Achan told her about life in the palace, the pressure to marry, and his dreams of finding true love. Zara spoke about the underwater kingdom, her father's wisdom, and her burning curiosity about the surface world. Hours passed like minutes. I should go, Zara said, as the sky began to lighten. My mother will be worried. Will you come back tomorrow night? Achan asked hopefully. Zara hesitated, then nodded. Yes, but we must be careful. When she returned home, her mother was waiting. Where have you been? Ina demanded, her face pale with worry. I just wanted to see the surface. Zar, have you lost your mind? They will kill you if they catch you. Mother, maybe they're not all as cruel as you think. Not cruel. Ina's voice rose. They would kill you without a second thought. Promise me you won't go up there again. But Zara couldn't make that promise. Night after night, she and Achan met by the river. They shared stories, dreams, and eventually their hearts. Their love grew deeper with each meeting. One night, after several months of meetings, Zara arrived looking troubled. What's wrong? Achan asked, immediately concerned. My father. He's arranging a marriage for me, she said, her voice trembling. Achan felt his heart constrict. When? In 2 months' time, Zara replied, looking up at him, her eyes glistening with tears. Achan, I don't want to marry him. I I love you. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, bridging two worlds that had been separated by hatred and fear for so long. Neither of them noticed the rules their love would break until it was too late. Weeks turned into months, and their secret meetings continued. But secrets have a way of revealing themselves. One morning, Zara felt strange. Her swimming felt heavier, and her stomach turned with an unfamiliar sensation. When she told her mother she wasn't feeling well, Ina's experienced eyes widened with recognition. Your scales are changing color, Ina observed, and you've been sleeping more than usual. Zara, are you with child? Zara couldn't meet her mother's gaze. Yes, she whispered. Who is the father? When Zara remained silent, Ina's voice grew sharp. Zara, who is the father? His name is Aken, Zara whispered. He's human. Human? Have you lost your mind? Do you know what they would do to you, to your child? He's not just any human. He's different, mother. He's kind and understanding, Zara whispered. He's Prince Aken. Ina's face went pale. The son of King Dara, the very king who ordered our banishment. Oh, Zara, what have you done? Devastated by her mother's reaction and desperate to find Aken, forgetting in her distress that it was broad daylight, Zara fled to the surface. The moment her head broke the water surface, shots erupted from the riverbank. Nets flew through the air, and before Zara could dive back to safety, she was entangled. Rough hands dragged her onto the shore, where angry villagers surrounded her. Please, she begged, I mean no harm. No harm, a fisherman spat. Like your people meant no harm to Toma. The beating began. Fists and feet rained down on her as she tried to protect her stomach, thinking only of her unborn child. In the palace, a guard burst into the throne room. Aken's heart stopped. Without a word to his father, he ran, his legs burning as he sprinted through the village, praying he would reach her in time. But when he arrived, it was too late. Zara lay still on the riverbank, her shiny blue scales dulled with dirt and blood. The crowd fell silent as their prince fell to his knees beside her. What have you done? He whispered, then louder. What have you done? You've killed them both, my love and my child. The crowd stepped back, shocked by his words. King Dara, who had followed his son, stood frozen at the edge of the gathering. From the river came a sound like thunder, and the water began to churn. Mallow, king of the Z people, rose from the depths, his trident glowing with power. Behind him, an army of merfolk broke the surface, their faces twisted with grief and rage, ready to dye the river red with blood. Finally, it was Zara's mother who stepped forward to broker peace. Standing before both kings, she spoke, My daughter died for love. Let her death be the last. Let her death be the last. Let her story teach us that hatred only breeds more hatred, while love might have shown us a better way. A new treaty was drawn up. The merfolk would no longer be banned from the surface, and humans would no longer react with violence to their presence. It wasn't perfect, but it was imperfect. But it was a beginning. Prince Aken never married. He devoted his life to maintaining peace between the two peoples, and every night until his death, he would sit by the river, remembering the love that changed two kingdoms. The story of Zara and Prince Akan teaches us a profound lesson about the consequences of hatred and the transformative power of love. It warns us about the dangers of allowing fear, prejudice, and anger to govern our actions and relationships. Their tale reminds us that misunderstandings and divisions only lead to suffering and loss, while empathy, open mindedness, and courage to love can pave the way for healing and unity. Zara and Achan's love defied the boundaries of two opposing worlds, yet their tragic fate revealed the cost of hatred and ignorance. It is a call for humanity to bridge divides, to listen, and to understand one another, no matter how different we may seem. This story encourages us to embrace compassion and reject the cycles of violence and vengeance that perpetuate suffering. Let us reflect on their sacrifice and strive to build a world where differences are celebrated and love prevails over hate. Thank you for watching my channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thought-provoking and inspiring stories like this one. Stay tuned for more exciting content only on this channel. As she opened the carton, a strange smell filled the kitchen, a pungent aroma that made her stomach churn slightly. She began washing the meats, noticing how unnaturally firm the texture felt under her fingers. Suddenly, her fingers brushed against something hard, a human finger. In the outskirts of a big city stood a ground house with tall, imposing walls covered in ivy. The house belonged to the wealthy Okoye family, who rarely interacted with their neighbors. They were known for keeping to themselves, and they were a very successful couple. A teenage girl from a small village surrounded by lush greenery, started working for the Okoye family 4 months ago. At first, it seemed like a good job. They paid her well, and she had enough to eat, but she was never allowed to leave the house. The workload was heavy, and she often found herself cleaning, cooking, and running errands for long hours without much rest. Despite the workload, she wasn't unhappy, but something always felt off, like the house was hiding a secret. Mr. Okoye and his wife, Madame Chika, had peculiar habits. They never ate beef, goat meat, chicken, or fish. Instead, they always requested one specific type of meat that Amaka couldn't quite identify. It looked like pork, but the texture and color were slightly different, with a faint, unfamiliar aroma. Whenever Amaka asked about it, Madame Chika would just brush her off, saying it was a special delicacy from her hometown. Amaka tried to ignore her growing unease, convincing herself that it was none of her business. Maybe the couple had strange tastes, or maybe it was for health reasons. However, her suspicions were aroused further when she noticed that no one else in the household ate the strange meat. G, the driver, and Emeka, the gateman, would always make excuses when offered a plate, saying they had already eaten or weren't hungry. When Amaka tried to ask them why, they would look at her with fear in their eyes and tell her to mind her own business, leaving her even more confused. One day, Madame Chika came home with a large carton of the mysterious meat, its packaging damp from ice that had partially melted. Amaka was instructed to prepare it immediately. As she opened the carton, a strange smell filled the kitchen, different from anything she had encountered before, carrying an unsettling metallic hint. She began washing the meats, her hands working mechanically as her mind drifted towards her family back home and the last time she had seen her siblings laughing under the baobab tree. Suddenly, her fingers brushed against something hard and out of place. Puzzled, Amaka pulled the piece out of the water. It was a long, thin bone, unlike anything she had ever seen in meat before. She continued to inspect it, her heart pounding, and then her eyes fell on something that made her gasp and drop the meat on the floor. A human finger. Amaka's world tilted, and she staggered back, clutching the sink for support. Her stomach churned, and she barely made it to the trash bin before vomiting. She looked back at the meat, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. It can't be true, she thought to herself. Her mind raced. How many times had she cooked this meat? How many times had Mr. and Mrs. Okoye sat at their table, eating with pleasure, while she unknowingly served them human flesh? She felt sickened, guilty, and terrified all at once. What kind of people were they? And more importantly, what would happen if they found out she knew? Amaka knew she had to get out of that house, but escaping was easier said than done. The gates were always locked, and Emeka, the gate man, never allowed anyone to leave the house without Mr. or Mrs. Okoye's permission. Jeed, the driver, was equally unfriendly and would not help her, no matter how much she pleaded. Amaka felt trapped, like a prisoner in a house filled with dark secrets. For the next few days, Amaka tried to act normal, pretending she hadn't seen anything. She did her chores quietly, keeping her head down and avoiding eye contact with anyone. But inside, she was plotting her escape. Late at night, when everyone was asleep, she would tiptoe to the kitchen, trying to find a way out. She thought about climbing over the fence, but it was too high and covered in sharp, broken glass. She considered sneaking out when the gates were briefly opened, but Emeka was always watching, his stern face lit dimly by the yellow glow of the security lamp. The days dragged on, each one filled with fear and anxiety. Amaka couldn't sleep. She couldn't eat. She was haunted by nightmares of bones and blood, of Mr. and Mrs. Okoye finding out she knew their secrets, of Miss how she knew their secrets. She knew she had to get out before it was too late. One morning, as Amaka was cleaning the living room, she overheard Madame Chika on a phone call. She was talking in a hushed tone, her voice calm but menacing. "Make sure the delivery is on time," Madame Chika said. "We have guests this weekend, and they are expecting something special." Amaka's blood ran cold. Who were these guests, and what did Madame Chika mean by something special? The thought that the Okoyes were not just eating human flesh, but possibly serving it to others, made Amaka's skin crawl. She knew she had to leave that day, no matter the cost. That evening, Amaka made her first attempt to escape. She packed a small bag with her most important belongings and waited until the house was quiet. She sneaked down to the back door, hoping to slip past Emeka while he was on his usual night rounds, his footsteps heavy and deliberate on the gravel. But as soon as she stepped outside, Emeka appeared from the shadows. "Where do you think you are going?" he asked. Amaka tried to come up with an excuse, but the fear in her voice gave her away. I I just wanted some fresh air," she stammered. Emeka grabbed her arm roughly. "Get back inside. You know the rules. No one leaves this house." Defeated, Amaka returned to her room, tears streaming down her face. She was scared, but she refused to give up. She had to be smart to think of another way. Days went by, and Amaka tried to gain Emeka's trust, bringing him extra food and helping him with his chores. But Emeka remained cold and distant, unwilling to be swayed by her kindness. Then, one fateful afternoon,